Well folks, this day isn't starting out as I had planned. We have failed to proceed. Not for the first time this year. We have had a problem with engine running. This time with the Mk1 MX5, which is very, very unusual for this one. And yeah, we were driving along the road over there and it just conked out. It just cut out and we gradually coasted to a halt and we were able to push it into this particular lay-by. Quite what the problem is, I'm not quite sure. I've wiggled the fuel injection relay. There's a fuel pump relay somewhere as well. We've had a look at the fuses. Can't see anything obvious leaking out. Plenty of fuel in it, but it just coasted to a halt. So once again, we've had to be on the phone to the emergency breakdown recovery services, to see if A, they can get us going, and B, if they can't, well, we'll have to get towed back home. As Harley pointed out a moment ago, at least we do have some butties with us. We were off to a meeting, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen today, because yes, the Mazda has broken down. Well, we've put the call in. It's currently 9:12, so we will just have to see how long it'll be. The ETA is 9:45, so about half an hour from now. Yeah, pesky little Mazda misbehaving. This is not something we normally expect.
It's betraying its Japanese heritage.
That's it, yeah. Very out of character indeed. I spy a yellow van pulling in. Slight feelings of deja vu with the Dodge pickup just a month or so back at the Royal Oak.
Matching, aren't they?
Yeah, matching colours. Well, the swift diagnosis is that the timing belt has gone. Now that has been changed, so it's a little bit disappointing. So I was hoping to take it to a local garage, but they're too busy and booked up for the next few weeks, so I think we'll just have to get it home and do a bit of research on that one. But that is a little bit disappointing. So we're going to get towed back on a bar. So not the day I was planning at all. Well, off we go, back homewards, powered by transit. This will be interesting. Well, once again, the AA came to the rescue. Now, a quick check on Google. The AA man had a quick look on Google. It would appear that the MX-5 engine is not an interference engine. And by that, I mean that if the belt goes, or a chain, some engines have chains, some have belts, but on a car with an interference engine, what happens is when all the timing goes to pot, the valves meet pistons with fairly dire consequences. But on first check of good old Google, it would appear that this is a non-interference engine, so when the belt goes, the pistons carry on going up and down, the valves keep going up and down, but they do not meet, and that is very, very important indeed. So we may just get away with fitting a fresh belt, but I'm sure, I was just sort of racking my brains on the way back, because a couple of years ago we had the water pump started making a racket, so I got hold of a water pump and asked the local garage to change it, which they did. And from memory, the timing belt sits behind the water pump, so you have to take the pump off to get at the timing belt. So I said to them, well, while it's all off, change the timing belt. So I need to go and check my old receipts and invoices just to see if that is the case. But I'm pretty certain that because having to change the water pump, it seemed to make sense to change the timing belt while we're at it. And this was only two years ago, maybe, if that. So I need to check through the paperwork and just see if that's the case, because if this timing belt is gone after just a couple of years and not great mileage, maybe 5,000 miles, something like that in a couple of years, it won't be very impressive. But yeah, I'll need to have a bit more of a research on that. But anyway, we are back home safe and sound. That's the main thing. And now we need to do a bit more research.
I think we should enter the lottery.
Ooh, those clouds look pretty mean. Now, whether they are going to make it as far as Woodford, I don't know, but maybe they're in for a slightly damp day.
Probably raining where we were parked at the moment.
Yeah, it was probably raining where we stopped. I'm just glad it wasn't on the motorway, because I was planning on going down the motorway in it tomorrow, so small mercies, I guess. Right folks, well, I'm back home, and yes, my memory hasn't failed me. So if we look at the odometer, the mileometer there, 70,000 mile, give or take. Back in 2021, or the date, the end of April, I ordered a water pump for the 1.8, hope you can see this, 1.8, cambelt, pulley, idler pulley, camshaft timing belt, all MX5s, cam cover gasket, belt tensioner spring, and an O-ring for the cam angle sensor. So the new water pump, because that was what was making the racket, like I talked about before. And I knew that while it was off, apparently you can actually change the cam belt without taking the water pump off, so I was wrong there when I was talking at the side of the road earlier today. But I figured with it all in pieces, while they're doing the water pump, it made sense to do the cam belt as well, because I just didn't know when it had been changed. And it's a good bit of preventative maintenance. So yeah, so this was all ordered and bought at the end of April 2021, so just over 3 years ago. Price paid $62.95. Okay, and less than 3 weeks later, the 19th of May 2021, we have the receipt from the local garage, fit owner supplied timing belt and water pump kit. Now on their invoice they've got the odometer reading, the mileage reading as 66,000. But I've handwritten 62,000, so even if we go with that, the cam belt has failed after 8,000 miles and 3 years. And however you look at that, that can't be right. I mean, you know, I understand that changing a cam belt is something you might do every 5 or 6 years, something like that. And usually, you know, how much mileage would you get out of a cam belt usually? 60,000 miles, 80,000 miles, maybe 100. I'm not really sure because I don't mess around with these modern cars all that often, but even 50,000, 60,000 mile, yeah, you'd think, okay, I'll start thinking about changing it. But 8,000 miles in 3 years, and this isn't an everyday use car, this is just mainly for going to shows and just out to the pub of an evening, that kind of thing. It is not our mainline, frontline car. So 8,000 miles in 3 years for the cam belt to go, that's just pretty poor. Now, what's happened here? I presume the work was done. I'm sure it has been done, because this garage I've been using for many years. So maybe it was just a failure of the cam belt. You know, maybe it was a poor batch. Who really knows? It's sort of 3 years down the line. There's no way of telling now. But it's pretty disappointing. It would have been doubly disappointing if I'd taken this preventative work, had this preventative work done just 3 and a bit years ago, and the belt had gone, and it had been an interference engine. That would have been very disappointing indeed. Because most engines nowadays, from what I can tell, certainly after speaking to the gentleman from the AA, you've got the valves that come sort of up and down, they're whizzing up and down, and the pistons are sort of going up and down as well, and the idea is they do not meet. So when the valves open, they come down, the piston is down here somewhere, so they never sort of meet, they just sort of do their own thing, and they don't bash into each other. But what happens is when the cam belt snaps, or a timing chain, but in this case a cam belt, the piston, because it's attached to the crankshaft which is spinning away and you're in gear and you're rolling along the road, the piston is still flying up and down as normal. And normally the belt would ensure that the valves are out of the way before the piston next comes up in the cylinder. But when the belt snaps, the valves just stay where they are. So in 1 or 2 cylinders you end up with the valve sticking down, and the piston comes up, wallops it, and it either bends the valve, snaps the valve head off. It can damage the top of the piston. You've potentially got bits of valve flying around in the cylinder, scoring the bores, and you can very quickly, in the blink of an eye, end up with a scrap engine, or at least a very expensive engine rebuild. So that is why you change cam belts. That they are lifed, so maybe after a few years or after a certain mileage, or a bit of both. So yeah, and I had this done. I knew I'd had it done 3 years ago when the water pump started making a racket. that's when I thought, yes, we'll change the timing belt while we're at it, the cam belt while we're at it, and then, yeah, I sort of fit and forget for a few years. But 3 years later, for it to pack up, which is what appears to have happened here, is pretty disappointing. When the AA guy came over, he got me to spin the engine over, and the engine span over, as you'd expect, and he had the oil filler cap off the top of the cam covers, and you could see the cams weren't moving at all, so clearly something has gone amiss with the belt. So yeah, all a bit disappointing. So I think we'll have to order a kit, another kit. They're not super expensive, probably £50–60, something like that. So it's not really the cost of the parts, it's just the aggravation, that we're not going to get to the event that we had planned to get to today, and potentially another one tomorrow. We're going to have to skip all that, which is pretty disappointing. Yeah, and then of course we'll have to get the work done now. Do we get the car taken, or do we take it to a garage to have the work done again and hope that it's done correctly? Or do I have a go at doing it myself? I'm not quite sure yet. I have actually watched a video on YouTube, and I will check to see if I've got the right size sockets and all that kind of thing. It needs a big 21mm 6-sided socket apparently for the crankshaft pulley. So you do need a fair few tools, but we have got a fair few tools here, so it doesn't look like an impossibly difficult job to do. Obviously it's easier if you're changing a belt that is just old but still in place. Then you know that all the timing and everything, the camshaft timing and everything, is as it should be. But of course, as soon as the belt snaps and the crank carries on whizzing round and the cams do their own thing, it throws out all the timing and everything. So yeah, we'll have to see on that one. But I think the first thing we'll do is probably order a kit, because either way we're going to need one of those. But yeah, a slightly disappointing day. The old trusty MX-5 has been let down, possibly by some squiffy aftermarket parts, and hopefully not as a result of the work actually not being done. I guess we'll never really know on that one, but like I say, I've used this garage for the thick end of 15–20 years, and I do trust them, and they've done all sorts of jobs for me in the past, so I'm sure that's not the case. I think we've probably just suffered as a result of an iffy bit of kit, a dodgy timing belt, which is disappointing but not unusual, especially when you're using aftermarket bits, which I think that probably was. But yeah, even so, it shouldn't have broken after such a short period of time and so little use, because this car doesn't do much mileage at all. Oh well, anyway, let's go and have a bite to eat, and then start ordering a few replacement parts for its engine, and then we'll have to decide what we're going to do. Right, so bonnet up. Let's have a quick look under here just to get the lie of the land. So this is twin overhead cam, so you've got one camshaft under here, fore and aft, another one there, and the plugs down the middle, and the camshaft sprockets run under here, one either side, and the belt goes round and then down there somewhere, and it picks up on the bottom crankshaft pulley down the bottom there somewhere. So there is a bit of disassembly. You have to whiz this off, take off all this trunking, which doesn't look particularly difficult to get off. You have to back off the adjuster for the alternator belt and take the belt off, and the alternator's down this side, and the power steering pump is there. Not sure if we can see that. Just, yeah, it's a bit bright, but yeah, the power steering pump has its own belt down there, so that has to be backed off the adjustment and take that belt off. The water pump apparently can stay in situ. There are some plastic covers there, and there's another one there, and that exposes where the cam belt actually runs. So yeah, like I say, I've just watched a video about this, and it doesn't look impossibly difficult as long as you've got suitable tools around. There is a fair bit of space between the front of the engine and the radiator, so you don't have to take the rad out, which is good. You have to drain it, or it's recommended that you drain it, but you can at least get at most things once this is out of the way, this plastic thing, and the top is off here. It doesn't look impossible. It's just frustrating that I've got to even consider doing this job. when I thought by having that preventative maintenance done back in 2021 I shouldn't have to do it at all. But such is life with slightly aged cars such as this one. I mean, it's nearly 30 years of age, and I didn't know when the belt had been changed, which is why when the water pump went I thought, well, I'll have the belts done while I'm at it. And as I have to take off the power steering pump belt and the alternator belt, which is just over there, down there, I may as well fit new ones of those as well. They're about £6 each, so again, to try and build a bit of reliability in, we'll change that while we're at it. Now the question is, do I get someone to do this, or do I have a crack at it myself? The kit of parts is only about £60, £70, something like that. It's just not the end of the world. If I was to pay someone to do it, what's it going to cost? A couple of £100 maybe, something like that. So it's not a deal breaker, but I still have to get it over there. So I think what I'll do is I'll order in the bits. It's a Saturday today, so I'll order the bits and they'll get hopefully delivered sort of end of next week, something like that. And in the meantime I will just watch many videos and also have a quick flick through the workshop manual that we do have, just to see if there is any reason why I couldn't have a crack at this myself, because it'd be nice to do it here, and then you know that the parts that you've actually ordered have been fitted, and it just gives you a bit more knowledge, a bit more experience of how this all works, and if you ever have a problem, how to possibly go about fixing it. You only really know an engine and a car when you've dived in and fixed things like this, so I would rather fix it myself. It's just whether I've got the time or not. That's always a bit of an issue, but yeah, anyway, that is just a bit of a look under the bonnet of the Mark 1 MX5. It's very similar, I think, to the Mark 2. This is the 1.8 litre engine. There was also the 1.6 version as well, which came before the 1.8, and they are both mercifully non-interferent engines, so even if the belt does snap you don't end up lunching your engine, because if the valves had met pistons that engine could now be scrap, or at least requiring a significant and substantial rebuild at the very least. So at least we'd dodged a bullet with that one. Right, a few days have passed and the postie knocked on the door a little while ago bearing gifts. Well, gifts that I had to pay for, of course. So what have we got in here? Mazda 1 power steering belt. Might as well replace these while they're off. Alternator belt. Like I said before in the previous clip, it's a bit disappointing that we have to replace timing belt after just 3 years and 8,000 miles, 8,000 very easy miles. It's not like it's been ragged, but anyway, while I was at it, obviously you get a new cam cover gasket as well. In here we've got the cam belt tensioner pulley. Again, all these things were replaced just 3 years ago, so I can't imagine they're worn, but maybe one of these failed, who knows. That's the cambelt idler pulley. So I've been watching a few videos on YouTube about how to change a timing belt. It's got a new air filter in there, might as well pop one of those on. I need to pull the plugs out, so we may as well put some fresh NGK plugs in, because I don't know how old the plugs are that are in it. The service pack came with a budget oil filter. I actually used a proper Mazda one last time I did the oil change recently, and there is another proper Mazda one in the garage as well, but I thought, well, this came with it anyway. And that is a spring for the tensioner, I believe. So yeah, so we've got quite the kit of parts there, and hopefully we'll be able to use these to return the little Mazda over there, return it back to life, because yeah, it seems a shame not to be able to drive it, especially when we get nice sunny evenings like this, which is a very welcome development indeed. So yeah, this has come, so yeah, I need to really knuckle down and get on with that job. I haven't done this before on the MX5. Last time I got the local garage to do it, but reading up on it, it doesn't look like an impossible challenge to change it. You just have to be fairly sort of methodical. Now, I won't be recording a video of doing or how to change the cam belt on the Mazda MK1, because there are many videos, probably much better than I could do already, on YouTube, some of which I have been watching, so there's no point me sort of going over that kind of thing again. And to be honest, I'd like to just concentrate on doing the job in hand without breaking off all the time to sort of film little bits, because yeah, it just makes it a lot harder to get a job done when you're constantly grabbing the camera and sorting the lighting out and all that kind of thing, which in some jobs doesn't matter. Some jobs are fairly easy to do and you can just sort of video as you go along, but when it's something fairly important and you need to get things set up correctly, you know, you really want to be doing it properly. So yeah, I won't be filming the actual job in hand, but I will report back once, hopefully, I have completed the work. Okay, well, it's mid-morning, folks. The MX-5 is nosed in the garage, Renault push right back. And we have started the strip down, the disassembly bits down there. Belt off, power steering over there, alternator belt over there. There's like a big bit of trunking thing as well, which we had to remove. The timing belt sits behind here, so this will come off. These little plastic covers will have to come off. The pulleys too, this one here, which is on the water pump, yep. And then the bottom pulley. Let's get some light. There we go. The bottom pulley has to come off as well, and then things will be revealed. But anyway, yeah, like I say, we're not actually going to video the whole job, but yeah, just a little interim update on the work as it proceeds. Okay, we've got the cam cover off. Something tells me something's not right here. Right, well, it's a little later after lunch and we are just about in reassembly mode now. So the new belt is on. These little marks here, so you have a mark at the top there which has to be at the top, E. This is the exhaust side, that's the inlet side, little I and a mark there, both at 12 o'clock. This little mark down here has to line up with that mark on the back plate there. And this notch here has to line up with that there. So obviously you have to allow for parallax error, but if you follow that along with your finger along the cog, along the tooth, that lines up with that, and that one lines up just fine with that one. That's tensioned up, the tension's down there, new tensioner, new idler pulley down there as well, just that shiny thing. I've just started putting the plastic covers back on down here. Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, you have to set the crank at top dead centre down there, which it is. So yeah, so just gradually reassembling these little plastic covers that go on the front here, and then I have to clean up the top here and put a new seal under the cam covers. I think they had been leaking because there was a sign of oil down, the plugs are down there. When I actually pulled the plugs out, they were quite wet with oil, but on the bit that doesn't go in the cylinder, not the threaded bit. So yeah, just a gentle bit of reassembly. These have been torqued up, the idler pulley and the tensioner, they've been torqued up. And then of course I need to put the bottom pulley on, which is like I think it's a harmonic balancer, that needs torquing up and Loctiting. So still bits and pieces to do, but we are getting there slowly. Right folks, well, it's a couple of hours later and everything we think is bolted back on. We haven't put the coolant in yet, but we're just going to fire it up for the first time and just see if the basics are okay, and if they are, then we'll put the antifreeze in. But everything at the front is torqued up that it should be. These are all nipped down. I cleaned up the cam covers a little bit.
Oh, the immobiliser.
So I was just going to get in. Let's go and stand over here. There is the old belt, just for reference, looking past its best, and yet only 3 years old and about 8,000 miles, so yeah, it's less than great. Right, if I say switch off, just switch off, okay? Well, it runs. Does everything appear normal? No odd lights or anything? Just the brake light. That's a handbrake light, that's okay. Okay, if you switch her off now. Oh, that's promising, so we'll just put some coolant in now.
Well, that's good.
Okay, so we have topped up the coolant. I've left the cap off for now. And then we'll just run it and warm it up, let the thermostat open, let the water start flowing, and then we can top it up if we need to. And then, yeah, we'll just let it run, see if everything is settled down. We'll look for any oil leaks around the cam cover, that kind of thing. We'll just see how we go. Right. Yeah, okay, if you want to do the honours again. Occasionally one of the cam followers sticks a little bit. Just try the steering, make sure the power steering works. Yeah. Just let it run, just let it idle. Right, well, coolant has been topped up, cap is back on. We'll just let it run a little bit and just monitor levels, look for leaks under the cam cover gasket. It's quite a thick rubber gasket under there, so it does work pretty well. Just keep an eye on the belts. If there are no leaks, then you just need to take it up and down the road to make sure it's pulling correctly and there are no flat spots. If there are flat spots, then it suggests that maybe it's a tooth out, but you know, I did it as per various books and videos and things that I watched over the last day or so, so fingers crossed we'll be on the right track. So I think we'll probably sign off this little video about the Mazda MX-5 Mk1 and its failure to proceed, which was most uncharacteristic. I'm still at a bit of a loss as to why that 3-year-old belt decided to throw a bit of a hissy and snap itself. Whether it was a problem with the idler pulley or the tensioner pulley, I'm not quite sure. They felt okay, they didn't feel as if they were sticking or stuck or graunchy or anything like that. But yeah, you just never know with these things. But, fingers crossed. I hesitate to be too optimistic and confident, but at least it's running again. So yeah, I think we'll sign this one off. Anyway, thank you very much for checking out this video. Please check out the rest of the channel if you're new to the Old Classic Car channel. And yeah, there'll be no doubt many more videos along very, very soon. So bye from now, from me, and bye from him.